Jungkook? Why are you bleeding? Jimin's voice cracks low, sharp, not loud but enough to freeze the entire room, and before anyone can even react, he steps closer, eyes locked on Jungkook's sleeve that's slowly turning darker by the second. And he doesn't blink. He doesn't breathe. He just stares like he already knows the truth. Jungkook is trying to hide, like this isn't the first time something's been kept from him, and right now I need you to tell me, what would you do if someone you trusted more than anyone suddenly looked at you like a stranger? And before we go any further, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments, because what you're about to hear, this isn't a story that ever reached the public. This is something that was buried, something even the fans never saw. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, like, and share, because stories like this, they don't come out twice. And what happened that night changed everything between them. Jungkook pulls his arm back fast, too fast, forcing a small laugh like nothing's wrong, like the tension in the air isn't crushing everyone in the room, like Jimin's stare isn't cutting straight through him, and he says it's nothing, just a scratch, just clumsy. But RM doesn't move, Jin doesn't speak. Taehyung's expression shifts in a way that feels off, like he already knows more than he should, and Jimin? He steps even closer now, voice dropping to something colder, something dangerous, asking one simple question, who did this to you? And Jungkook hesitates, just for a second. But that second is enough for everything to start falling apart. Jungkook doesn't answer, and that silence hits harder than anything he could have said, because everyone in the room knows Jungkook never hesitates unless something is seriously wrong, and Jimin catches it instantly. The way Jungkook's eyes flick away, the way his shoulders tense, like he's preparing to run instead of explain. And that's when Jimin's expression changes completely. No more confusion, no more concern, just something sharp and controlled, something that says he's already connecting dots no one else can see. And he reaches out, grabs Jungkook's wrist before he can pull away again, tighter this time, not aggressive but firm enough to stop him. And Jungkook flinches, barely noticeable, but Jimin feels it, and that small reaction makes his grip tighten just a little more as he slowly pulls the sleeve up, revealing the truth Jungkook was trying so hard to hide. The blood isn't from a simple cut, it's deeper, messier, like something tore through skin instead of brushing against it. And the room goes completely still. Jin mutters something under his breath. RM steps forward like he's about to say something but stops. And Taehyung, he doesn't look surprised. Not really. And that detail doesn't escape Jimin. Not at all. Because right now, Jimin isn't just seeing Jungkook's injury. He's reading everyone, every micro-expression, every shift in posture. And something about this situation doesn't feel right. Not even close. And when Jimin finally speaks again, his voice is quieter, but it carries more weight than before. This isn't a scratch. And Jungkook exhales, like he's already tired of the conversation, like he knew this moment would come and just hoped to delay it, and he tries to pull his hand back again, this time a little more forcefully. I said it's nothing, Hyung, but Jimin doesn't let go, not this time, because now, it's not just about the injury. Now, it's about the lie, and Jimin hates being lied to more than anything, especially by Jungkook, especially like this. And the tension snaps when Jimin suddenly lets go, stepping back like he's creating distance not just physically but emotionally, like something just broke in that moment. And he looks at Jungkook not with anger, not yet, but with something worse, disappointment. And that hits Jungkook harder than any accusation could have, because Jungkook can handle anger, he can fight back against it, but disappointment from Jimin, that's something he doesn't know how to face. And for a second, just a second, it looks like he might say something, like he might finally tell the truth. But then Taehyung moves just a small step forward, barely noticeable, but enough to shift Jungkook's attention, enough to remind him of something. And whatever that reminder is, it shuts him down completely, and he straightens, pulls his sleeve back down, and says it again, firmer this time, I'm fine. And that's when Jimin's patience finally cracks. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a quiet, controlled way that's far more dangerous, because he nods once, slow, like he's accepting the answer, like he's letting it go. But his eyes say the opposite. His eyes say this isn't over, not even close, and he turns away, walking toward the door, and for a moment, everyone thinks he's leaving it at that he's choosing not to push further. But then he stops, hand on the handle, and without turning back, he says, "If you walk out of this room without telling me the truth, don't expect me to ask again." And the silence that follows is suffocating, because that wasn't just a warning. That was a line being drawn, and Jungkook knows it. Everyone knows it. And the worst part is, Jungkook still doesn't speak. The door opens, and Jimin walks out without waiting another second, and the moment he's gone, the air in the room shifts completely, like everyone's been holding their breath and can finally release it. But that relief doesn't last long, because Jungkook suddenly sways, just slightly, but enough for RM to notice, enough for Jin to rush forward. "Hey, sit down." But Jungkook shakes his head immediately, stubborn as always, trying to brush it off, trying to act like he's still in control. But the blood seeping through his sleeve says otherwise. And now that Jimin isn't there to keep things contained, the concern turns into urgency fast. RM's voice becomes more direct, more commanding. "Jungkook, that's not normal. We need to check that." But Jungkook steps back, avoiding their hands, avoiding their questions, and his gaze flicks to Taehyung again, just for a second. And that silent exchange doesn't go unnoticed this time. Not by RM, not by Jin, and definitely not by Suga, who's been quiet this whole time, watching everything with a sharp, calculating look, and he finally speaks, low and steady. "What aren't you telling us?" And Jungkook exhales, running a hand through his hair. Frustration starting to show now, not just from the situation but from being cornered, and he mutters, "It's handled." But that answer only makes things worse, because handled doesn't explain the injury, doesn't explain the secrecy, and definitely doesn't explain the look Taehyung just gave him. And before anyone else can press further, the door opens again hard and Jimin's back. And this time, he's not alone, because J-Hope is right behind him, phone already in his hand, expression serious in a way that instantly raises the stakes. And Jimin doesn't waste time. He doesn't look at anyone else, just Jungkook. And he says, "We're going to the hospital." No room for argument, no hesitation, just a decision made. And Jungkook's reaction is immediate, sharp, "No." And that one word is enough to stop everyone in their tracks again, because Jungkook doesn't refuse like that unless there's something bigger at play, something he's protecting. And Jimin steps closer, his voice dropping again. "You don't get to say no right now." But Jungkook meets his gaze, equally intense, equally unyielding. "I said I'm fine." And for a moment, it feels like they're on opposite sides of something none of the others fully understand yet. Like this isn't just about an injury anymore. This is about control, about trust, about something deeper that's been building for a while now. And the standoff stretches just long enough to make everyone uncomfortable, just long enough to make it clear that whatever's happening here isn't simple. And then Jungkook's knees buckle. It happens fast. Too fast for anyone to react properly. 1 second Jungkook is standing there, defiant, holding his ground, and the next his body just gives in, like whatever strength he was forcing himself to hold on to finally slips away, and he collapses forward, not even catching himself. And Jimin is the first to move, faster than anyone, catching him before he hits the ground, calling his name in a way that sounds more like panic than anything else. And suddenly everything becomes chaos, voices overlapping, Jin telling someone to get towels, RM already pulling out his phone, J-Hope dialing the emergency number without even asking, and Taehyung he freezes, just for a second, staring at Jungkook like this is exactly what he was afraid of, like this was always going to happen. And that hesitation, that tiny pause, is enough for Suga to notice again, enough for suspicion to start forming into something more concrete. And Jimin doesn't care about any of that right now. All he sees is Jungkook's face going pale, his breathing uneven, and the blood there's more now. Way more than before, soaking through fabric, staining Jimin's hands as he tries to press against the wound, trying to stop something he doesn't fully understand, and his voice is shaking when he speaks. "Why didn't you say anything?" But Jungkook doesn't answer. Not this time. because he can't, his eyes barely open, his grip weak when he tries to push Jimin's hand away. Like even now he's still trying to hide it, still trying to keep whatever this is under control. And that makes Jimin's chest tighten in a way that feels dangerously close to breaking. Because this isn't just stubbornness, this is fear. And Jungkook doesn't show fear unless it's something serious, something that could change everything. And when the paramedics finally arrive, the room shifts again, from chaos to urgency, from confusion to action. And as they take over, lifting Jungkook onto the stretcher, asking questions no one can fully answer, Jimin steps back just enough to let them work, but his eyes never leave Jungkook, not for a second. And when they ask who's coming with him, Jimin doesn't hesitate. "I am." And he moves to follow immediately, but just before he does, he glances back at the others, and his gaze lands on Taehyung, and this time, there's no confusion in it, no uncertainty, just a clear, unspoken accusation. And Taehyung sees it, feels it, and doesn't look away, and that silent moment between them says more than any words could, because whatever Jungkook was hiding, Taehyung knows something about it, and Jimin just realized it. The ambulance doors slam shut, and the siren cuts through the night as they speed away, leaving the rest of them standing there in the aftermath, in the silence that feels heavier now than it did before. And RM is the first to move, turning to Taehyung with a look that's calm on the surface but sharp underneath. "You knew. It's not a question. Not really." And Taehyung exhales slowly, like he's been holding that truth in for too long, like he's been waiting for this moment whether he wanted it or not. And Suga steps closer, crossing his arms. "Start talking." And for a second, Taehyung considers staying silent, considers protecting whatever promise he made, but then he looks at the blood still on the floor, at the reality of what just happened, and something in his expression shifts. Something that says the situation just crossed a line he can't ignore anymore, and he finally speaks. Quiet but clear, it wasn't supposed to get this bad, and that one sentence is enough to confirm everything they weren't wrong. There is more to this. Something planned, something hidden, something that went wrong. And Jin shakes his head, disbelief mixing with frustration. "What are you talking about?" And Taehyung runs a hand through his hair, pacing slightly, like he's trying to figure out how much to say, how to explain something that clearly isn't simple. And he mutters, he was trying to fix it before anyone found out, and RM's expression tightens. "Fix what?" And Taehyung stops, looks at them, really looks at them this time, and says something that changes everything in an instant. The threat, and the word hangs in the air, heavy, dangerous, and suddenly this isn't just about an injury. This is about something bigger, something that's been happening behind the scenes without anyone else knowing. And as the reality of that starts to settle in, as questions begin to form faster than answers, one thing becomes painfully clear. Jungkook didn't just hide an injury, he hid a war, and now Jimin is right in the middle of it without even realizing how deep it goes. The hospital lights hit Jimin's eyes the second the ambulance doors swing open, too bright, too sterile, everything moving too fast and not fast enough at the same time, and he doesn't let go of Jungkook's hand even when the paramedics try to separate them, his grip tight, almost desperate. Like if he lets go even for a second, something irreversible will happen. And Jungkook is barely conscious now, head tilting to the side, lips slightly parted, breathing uneven in a way that makes Jimin's chest tighten with every second that passes, and the voices around him blur questions, instructions, medical terms, but none of it sticks, because Jimin's focus is locked on one thing only, Jungkook's face, pale in a way he's never seen before. And when they finally push him through the ER doors, that's when they force Jimin to stop. A nurse stepping in front of him, firm but not unkind, telling him he can't go further. And for a moment, just a moment, Jimin looks like he might argue, like he might push past everyone and follow anyway. But then he sees the blood on his hands again. Fresh, real, and it grounds him just enough to stop, just enough to step back, and the doors close in front of him with a finality that feels suffocating. And suddenly, he's alone in the hallway, the noise fading into a distant hum, and that's when everything he's been holding in finally hits. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a quiet, crushing wave. Because now there's nothing to distract him from the truth, Jungkook lied. Jungkook hid something serious, and worst of all, Jungkook didn't trust him enough to say it. And that realization sits heavy in his chest, twisting into something sharper the longer he stands there. And when the rest of the members arrive minutes later, breathless, tense, bringing with them the weight of whatever Taehyung told them on the way, Jimin doesn't greet them, doesn't ask questions. He just says one thing without looking away from the closed doors. Start talking. And this time, it's not directed at Jungkook, it's directed at them, at the ones who knew, and the silence that follows says everything before anyone even speaks. Taehyung steps forward first, slower than usual. Like each step is a decision he's not fully sure about. And Jimin finally turns to look at him, really look at him, and the tension between them is immediate, heavy, because this isn't just about information anymore, this is about betrayal. And Taehyung knows it. You can see it in the way his jaw tightens slightly, in the way he avoids holding Jimin's gaze for too long, and RM stays just behind him, watching both of them carefully, ready to step in if things escalate. But for now, he lets it play out, because this is something that can't be interrupted. And Taehyung exhales slowly before speaking. A few weeks ago, Jungkook started getting messages, and Jimin's expression doesn't change, but the air around him does, colder, sharper. What kind of messages? And Taehyung hesitates just enough to make it worse before answering, threats. And the word lands hard, heavier than it did before, because now it's real, now it has context, now it's not just a vague idea, and Jimin's mind starts moving fast, connecting pieces, trying to understand why Jungkook would hide something like that, why no one told him, and he asks the obvious question, the one that's been building since the moment he walked out of that room earlier. And you didn't think to tell me? And Taehyung's response comes quicker this time, almost defensive. He didn't want you involved, and that hits something deep, something personal. And Jimin lets out a short, humorless laugh, shaking his head slightly. Of course he didn't. But there's no real amusement in it, just frustration, just hurt. And Suga cuts in before things spiral further, voice calm but firm. It wasn't just that. And all eyes shift to him now, and he continues, whoever sent those messages, they knew things, details they shouldn't have known. And that changes the situation again, raises the stakes in a way that makes everyone more alert, more tense. And RM adds quietly, we thought it might be someone watching from the outside. And Jimin's gaze sharpens immediately. Thought? And RM meets his eyes, steady. We weren't sure. And that uncertainty, that lack of control, it doesn't sit well with Jimin at all, because if there's one thing he hates, it's not knowing what he's dealing with. And he takes a step closer, his voice dropping. And Jungkook decided to handle this alone? And Taehyung shakes his head, finally looking at him directly. Not alone. He had a plan. And that word again, plan, makes everything feel more complicated, more deliberate. And Jimin's next question comes out sharper, more urgent. What plan? And Taehyung opens his mouth to answer. But before he can, the ER doors swing open again, and a doctor steps out, scanning the group quickly before asking, who's Park Jimin? And the conversation stops instantly, tension shifting from suspicion back to something more immediate, more dangerous. And Jimin steps forward without hesitation, I am. And the doctor's expression is serious, controlled, the kind that doesn't give much away but still manages to make everything feel heavier. And he says, we need to talk about Jungkook's condition. And just like that, whatever answers Jimin was about to get have to wait. The words don't come out right away. The doctor takes a second, like he's choosing them carefully, like he knows whatever he's about to say isn't going to be easy to hear. And Jimin's patience is already thin, stretched too tight by everything that's happened in the last hour. So when the silence lingers just a little too long, he cuts in. Just tell me. And the doctor nods slightly, professional but direct. The injury is deeper than it looked. There's internal damage and significant blood loss. And Jimin's heart drops at that, but he doesn't interrupt, doesn't react outwardly, just listens. Because right now, He needs information more than anything else. And the doctor continues, "We've stabilized him for now, but the next few hours are critical." And that phrase critical echoes in Jimin's mind, louder than anything else, because it means uncertainty, it means risk. It means this isn't over yet, not even close. And he asks the only question that matters in that moment. Is he going to be okay? And the doctor doesn't give a direct answer. Not really. Just says, "We're doing everything we can." And that non-answer tells Jimin everything he needs to know. And for a second, just a second, the control he's been holding onto starts to slip, but he catches it quickly, grounding himself, focusing on what needs to be done next. "Can I see him?" And the doctor hesitates before nodding, briefly. And that's enough, more than enough. And Jimin moves immediately, not waiting for anyone else, not looking back, just following the nurse down the hallway. And as he walks, the noise fades again. Everything narrowing down to one point, one goal. And when he finally steps into the room, the sight that greets him is something he's not prepared for. Because Jungkook looks fragile, more than he's ever seen him, hooked up to monitors, bandaged, still, and for a moment, Jimin just stands there, frozen, taking it in, processing it, and then he moves closer, slowly, like he's afraid of breaking something just by being there, and he sits down beside the bed, eyes never leaving Jungkook's face, and he reaches out, hesitates for a fraction of a second before gently taking his hand, careful this time, careful in a way he wasn't earlier, and his voice, when he finally speaks, is softer than before, but no less intense. "You're an idiot." And there's no anger in it. Not really. Just relief. Just something raw and unfiltered. And he exhales, shaking his head slightly, hiding something like this. And his grip tightens just a little. "What were you thinking?" And for a moment, there's no response. Just the steady beeping of the machines. Just the quiet hum of the room. And then, barely noticeable, Jungkook's fingers move, weak but there, and Jimin stills instantly, eyes snapping to his face, and slowly, Jungkook's eyes open, unfocused at first, then gradually settling on Jimin, and there's something in that look, something that hits Jimin harder than anything else so far. Not relief, not surprise, but guilt, and the first thing Jungkook whispers, barely audible, is, "You shouldn't be here." And that changes everything again. Jimin's expression hardens immediately at those words, not because he's angry, but because of what they imply. Because even now, even like this, Jungkook is still trying to push him away, still trying to keep him out of whatever this is. And that's not something Jimin is willing to accept anymore, not after everything that just happened. And he leans in slightly, voice low but firm, too late for that. And Jungkook exhales weakly, closing his eyes for a second like he's already exhausted by the conversation. Like he doesn't have the strength to argue but still wants to. And he murmurs, "It's not safe." And that word safe immediately shifts Jimin's focus again. Because it confirms what the others said, confirms that this isn't just about an injury, this is something ongoing, something dangerous. And Jimin doesn't pull back, doesn't soften. He presses further, then start explaining. And Jungkook's grip tightens slightly around his hand, not enough to stop him, but enough to show hesitation, conflict. And when he finally opens his eyes again, there's a different kind of tension there, something deeper, something that's been building for a while. And he says, slowly, carefully, "If you know, they won't stop at me." And that sentence lands heavy, heavier than anything else so far, because it turns the situation from personal to shared, from hidden to unavoidable. And Jimin doesn't look away, doesn't even blink. "They already didn't stop at you." And Jungkook's expression shifts at that, just slightly, confusion mixing with concern. And Jimin continues, voice steady but sharp, "You think keeping me in the dark was going to protect me?" And there's a beat of silence, a moment where Jungkook doesn't have an answer. And that's rare, that's dangerous, because it means Jimin is right, at least partially. And Jimin leans back just enough to create space, but not distance, never distance. And he says something that changes the direction of everything moving forward. "You don't get to decide that alone anymore." And for the first time since he woke up, Jungkook looks uncertain, not about the situation, but about Jimin, about how far he's willing to go, about what he's willing to risk. And that uncertainty is new, unfamiliar. And just as Jungkook is about to respond, just as he's about to say something that might finally explain everything, the monitor beside him suddenly spikes, the steady rhythm breaking into something erratic, something wrong, and the door bursts open as medical staff rush in, voices sharp, urgent, pushing Jimin back as they take over. And in that chaos, in that sudden shift from fragile stability to critical danger, Jungkook's hand slips from Jimin's grasp, and the last thing Jimin hears before he's forced out of the room again is a single, broken sentence. It wasn't an accident. The moment the door slams shut again, Jimin just stands there, frozen in the hallway, like everything inside him has been ripped out and left behind in that room, his hand still slightly raised from where Jungkook's grip slipped away, and the words echo over and over in his head. It wasn't an accident, because that confirms it, completely. No more guessing, no more doubt. This wasn't random. This wasn't careless. This was deliberate, planned, targeted. And suddenly, the situation feels 10 times bigger than it did just minutes ago. And Jimin exhales slowly, trying to steady himself, trying to think clearly. But his thoughts are already racing, connecting every moment from earlier. The hesitation, the glances, the way Taehyung didn't look surprised, the way Jungkook kept trying to push him away. And it all leads to one conclusion. This didn't just happen tonight. This has been building, and they let it, they hid it, and that realization snaps something inside him, not loud, not explosive, but sharp and focused. And he turns immediately, walking back down the hallway with purpose, with a kind of controlled intensity that makes everyone look up when he approaches. And RM is the first to notice, stepping forward slightly, Jimin. But Jimin doesn't stop, doesn't slow down, his eyes locked on Taehyung again, and when he speaks, his voice is calm. But there's no warmth in it at all. You're not done talking, and Taehyung exhales, like he knew this was coming, like he's been waiting for it since the moment Jimin walked out of that first room, and Suga shifts slightly beside him, watching carefully, because this isn't just a conversation anymore. This is an interrogation, and Jimin steps closer, close enough that there's no space left for deflection, no room for half answers, and he says, "What did he mean?" And Taehyung doesn't pretend to misunderstand, doesn't play it off. He knows exactly what Jimin is asking, and for a moment, he just looks at him, really looks at him, like he's trying to measure something, like he's deciding how much truth Jimin can handle. And that hesitation is all it takes for Jimin's patience to thin even further. "Don't do that," his voice drops, sharper now. "Don't decide what I should or shouldn't know." And that hits. It lands exactly where it needs to, because Taehyung's expression shifts slightly, the hesitation cracking just enough to let something more honest through, and he finally speaks. It wasn't just threats, and the words settle heavy, because that's already worse than what they thought. And Jimin's gaze doesn't waver. "Then what was it?" And Taehyung answers, quieter this time, but clearer. "They got close." And that changes everything in an instant, because close doesn't mean messages, it doesn't mean distance. It means proximity, it means access, it means whoever is behind this got near enough to hurt Jungkook directly. And Jimin's mind locks onto that detail immediately, his voice tightening just slightly. "How close?" And Taehyung doesn't sugarcoat it, doesn't soften the impact, close enough to do that. And he gestures subtly toward the ER doors, toward where Jungkook is fighting to stay stable, and the implication hits harder than anything else so far, because now this isn't just about a threat. This is about a breach, a failure, something slipping through every layer of protection they thought they had. And Jimin's chest tightens again, but this time, it's not just fear, it's anger, sharp and rising. And he asks the question that's been forming since that realization hit. Who knew? And the silence that follows is different this time, heavier, more deliberate. And when Taehyung finally answers, it's not what Jimin expects, not everyone. And that's when the twist starts to take shape, because that answer doesn't just confirm secrecy, it confirms division. Jimin's eyes flick briefly to the others. Scanning their expressions one by one, Jin looks confused, genuinely. J-Hope tense but clearly out of the loop. RM controlled but concerned. Suga unreadable as always. And then there's Tae-young, standing there with just enough guilt in his posture to make everything worse, and Jimin exhales slowly, piecing it together in real time. So this wasn't just Jungkook's decision, and Tae-young doesn't answer right away, but he doesn't deny it either, and that silence is confirmation enough. And Jimin lets out a quiet, humorless laugh again, shaking his head slightly like he can't quite believe what he's hearing. You helped him hide it. And this time, Tae-young does respond quickly, almost defensively. I helped him control it. And that distinction only makes things worse, because it means this wasn't just passive silence. This was active involvement, and Jimin steps even closer now. Voice low, dangerous. Control what? And Tae-young's jaw tightens, because now there's no avoiding it, no way to keep things vague anymore. And he finally says it, the truth that's been circling around them this whole time. Whoever's behind this, they weren't just watching, they were testing him. And that word testing lands differently, more calculated, more intentional, and Jimin's mind immediately jumps ahead. Testing how? And Tae-young's gaze drops for just a second before coming back up, steady but heavy, pushing him, seeing how far they could go, how much he could take before he broke, and the implications of that are immediate and terrifying, because it means Jungkook wasn't just attacked once. This was a pattern, an escalation, something that built up to tonight, and Jimin's fists clench at his sides, his voice tightening despite his effort to keep it controlled. And you let him deal with that alone? And Tae-young shakes his head quickly, frustration bleeding through now. He didn't want anyone else involved, especially you. And that circles back again, always back to the same point, the same decision Jungkook made. And Jimin's expression hardens at that. Stop using that as an excuse. Because at this point, it doesn't matter what Jungkook wanted. What matters is what actually happened. And what happened is that he ended up in the ER, barely conscious, because of something that could have been stopped earlier. And the tension between them spikes again, sharper this time, more personal. And Suga steps in just enough to keep it from exploding completely, his voice cutting through the moment. There's more. And both Jimin and Tae-young pause, turning toward him, and Suga meets Jimin's gaze directly. The messages stopped yesterday, and that detail seems small at first, but it shifts everything once you think about it, because if the threat stopped, and then the attack happened, that's not a coincidence. That's a transition, a move from warning to action, and Jimin processes that quickly, his voice quieter now, more focused. So tonight was the end of something? And Suga nods slightly. Or the beginning? And that uncertainty hangs in the air, heavy and unresolved. And Jimin feels it settle in his chest, because if this is just the beginning, then Jungkook might not be the only target anymore. The realization hits all of them at the same time. You can see it in the way their expressions shift, in the way the room seems to tighten around them. Because this situation just expanded beyond Jungkook, beyond one person, beyond one incident, and Jimin is the first to act on it, turning sharply to RM, security, and RM nods immediately, already pulling out his phone, already moving to make the calls that should have been made earlier, and J-Hope steps closer, his voice low but urgent. We need to lock everything down, and Jin adds quietly, and figure out how they got close in the first place. And that question hangs there, unanswered but critical, because that's the key. That's the part that doesn't make sense yet, and Jimin's mind is already working through possibilities. None of them good, all of them pointing to the same uncomfortable truth. This wasn't random, this wasn't luck, this was someone who knew what they were doing. Someone who understood their schedules, their routines, their vulnerabilities, and that kind of knowledge doesn't come from the outside easily. And that thought lingers just long enough to be dangerous, just long enough to plant doubt where there wasn't any before. And Jimin's gaze shifts again, slower this time, more deliberate, moving from one member to another, not accusing, not yet, but questioning. Because if someone got that close, someone either let them or failed to stop them, and both options are unacceptable. And Tae-young notices that look, notices the shift, and his expression tightens again. "Don't start that." And Jimin's eyes snap back to him. Sharp. "Start what?" And Taehyung steps forward, just slightly, enough to close the distance again, looking at us like that, and there's something defensive in his tone, something that suggests he knows exactly where Jimin's thoughts are going, and Jimin doesn't deny it, doesn't soften it. He just says, "Then give me a reason not to." And that lands hard, because it's not just frustration anymore, it's suspicion, and that's a line they've never crossed before. Not like this, not openly, and the tension spikes again, sharper than before, more dangerous, because now it's not just about what happened, it's about who might be responsible, directly or indirectly, and before that confrontation can go any further, before it can fracture something that might not be fixable, the ER doors open again, and everyone turns instantly, the focus snapping back to the one thing that matters most right now, Jungkook. The doctor steps out again, and this time his expression is more urgent, less controlled, and that alone is enough to make Jimin's chest tighten all over again, because it means something changed. Something didn't go as planned, and Jimin moves forward immediately. What happened? And the doctor doesn't waste time. He's conscious, but we need answers. And that catches Jimin off guard just enough to make him pause. Answers? And the doctor nods. The injury. It's not consistent with an accident or a simple altercation, and that lines up perfectly with what Jungkook said before, with everything they've just learned. And the doctor continues, "We need to know exactly what caused it, or we might miss something critical." And that puts them in a position none of them were ready for, because now the truth isn't just important, it's necessary. Medically, immediately, and Jimin's mind shifts gears instantly, from suspicion to action, from questioning to decision-making, and he nods once, firm. "I'll talk to him." And the doctor steps aside, letting him through without hesitation this time, and as Jimin walks back into that room, the weight of everything that's been revealed follows him in, pressing down on every step. And when he reaches Jungkook's bedside again, the atmosphere is different, quieter, more fragile, but also more urgent, because now there's no more time to avoid the truth, no more room to delay. And Jungkook looks at him the moment he enters, eyes clearer this time but still heavy with everything he's been holding back, and for a second, neither of them speaks, because they both know this is it. This is the moment where everything changes. And Jimin breaks the silence first, his voice steady but firm, no more hiding, and Jungkook exhales slowly, like he's been waiting for this just as much as he's been avoiding it, and he nods, just once, before saying the words that shift the entire story again. "It wasn't just me they were testing, it was you too." Jimin doesn't react right away, not because he didn't hear it, but because his brain needs a second to process what Jungkook just said, because those words don't just change the situation, they rewrite it completely. And the silence that follows stretches just long enough to feel heavy, uncomfortable, dangerous. And when Jimin finally speaks, his voice is quieter than before, but sharper, more focused. "Explain." And Jungkook shifts slightly against the bed, wincing despite himself. But he doesn't look away this time, doesn't try to deflect or downplay it, because at this point, there's no point in hiding anymore, not after everything that's happened. And he exhales slowly before starting. "The messages, they weren't just about me." And Jimin's eyes narrow slightly, already anticipating where this is going, already bracing for something worse. And Jungkook continues, "They mentioned you." And that lands immediately, a direct hit, because it confirms what Jimin feared the moment Suga said the threats might not stop at Jungkook. And Jimin's jaw tightens just slightly. "What about me?" And Jungkook hesitates, just for a fraction of a second, but it's enough to show that whatever he's about to say matters a lot. And then he says it, clear, direct, no way to misunderstand. "They said you were the weak point." And that shifts something in the room instantly, because it's not just a threat anymore. It's an assessment, a strategy, something calculated and personal. And Jimin doesn't flinch outwardly, doesn't show the impact right away. But inside, that sentence lands hard, because it's not just about being targeted, it's about being used. about being seen as leverage against someone he cares about, and that thought alone is enough to spark something dangerous, something protective, something that refuses to accept that position. And Jimin leans in slightly, voice dropping. "So you decided to handle it alone?" Not a question. Not really. More like a statement that he needs confirmed. And Jungkook nods once. "If they thought you were the way to get to me, then keeping you out of it was the only option." And there it is. The reasoning, flawed or not, it makes sense in its own way. But that doesn't make it right. Not to Jimin. Not after everything that's happened. And his expression hardens again. Not with anger this time, but with something more controlled, more deliberate. And how did that work out? And Jungkook doesn't answer immediately. Because he doesn't need to. The situation speaks for itself. The injury, the hospital, everything. And that silence is enough, more than enough. And Jimin exhales slowly, straightening just a little, creating space, not physically but emotionally. Because right now, he needs clarity more than anything else. And he asks the next question, the one that matters most now. What do they want? And Jungkook's gaze shifts slightly, not away, but inward, like he's recalling something he didn't want to believe was real. And when he answers, his voice is lower, heavier. Control? And that word hangs there. Simple but loaded. Because control over what? Over who? Over how far they can push before something breaks? And Jimin doesn't let it sit unanswered. Control over you? And Jungkook shakes his head slowly. Over us. And that's when it becomes clear this isn't just about one person anymore. This is about the group, about the bond between them, about something bigger than any one of them can handle alone. And Jimin feels that shift settle into place, solid and unavoidable. And for the first time since this started, his focus changes completely from questioning Jungkook to understanding the situation they're both in. And that understanding leads to one immediate conclusion. This isn't something they can keep reacting to. This is something they have to confront. Back in the hallway, the tension hasn't eased at all. If anything, it's gotten worse, heavier, more uncertain. Because now everyone is waiting. Not just for news about Jungkook's condition, but for whatever truth Jimin is about to bring back with him. And Taehyung stands slightly apart from the others, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the floor, like he's replaying everything that led to this moment, every decision, every choice. And Suga watches him for a second before speaking, low enough that only Taehyung hears. "You knew it would end like this." And Taehyung doesn't look up, doesn't deny it, just exhales slowly. "I knew it wouldn't stay contained." And that distinction matters, because it means even he didn't expect it to escalate this far, not this fast. And RM finishes his call, stepping back toward them, his expression serious. Security's being reinforced, but he hesitates slightly. And that alone is enough to draw everyone's attention. There's no sign of forced access. And that detail lands quietly but heavily, because it confirms the worst possibility, the one none of them wanted to say out loud. And Jin is the first to voice it, his tone uncertain but honest. "So they didn't break in." And J-Hope finishes the thought. "They got in another way." And the implications of that settle in slowly but surely, because it means familiarity, it means knowledge, it means someone who understood how things worked well enough to bypass everything without leaving a trace. And that thought alone is enough to make the room feel smaller, tighter, more dangerous. And Taehyung finally looks up, meeting RM's gaze directly. Then we stop thinking like this is external. And that shifts the direction again, because now they're not just dealing with an outside threat, they're considering something much closer, something much harder to confront. And before anyone can respond to that, before they can fully process what it means, the door opens again and Jimin steps out. And the moment he does, everyone knows something changed. Because his expression isn't confused anymore. It isn't just angry or frustrated. It's resolved, focused, like he just made a decision that's going to affect all of them. And he doesn't waste time, doesn't ease into it. He just says, "They're not after Jungkook." And the room stills instantly, because that contradicts everything they thought up until now. And Jimin continues, his voice steady, controlled. "They're after us." And the weight of that statement settles in, heavy and undeniable. And for a second, no one speaks. Because there's no easy response to something like that. no simple solution. And then Jimin adds the one detail that changes everything again, and they think I'm the way to break him. The shift is immediate, visible, in every single one of them, because now the threat has a clear direction, a clear target, and more importantly, a clear strategy. And J-Hope is the first to react, stepping forward, his voice tight with concern. Then we move you, keep you somewhere safe. But Jimin shakes his head before he even finishes. No. And that one word is enough to stop the conversation before it can fully start, because there's something in his tone that makes it clear he's not considering that option at all. And RM steps in next, more measured, but just as firm. Jimin, this isn't something you can brush off. And Jimin meets his gaze directly, unflinching. I'm not brushing it off. And there's a difference in the way he says it, something more deliberate, more controlled. And Suga picks up on it immediately, his eyes narrowing slightly. Then what are you doing? And that's when Jimin says something that shifts the balance of the situation completely. I'm using it. And the words hang there for a second, because they're not what anyone expected, not even close. And Taehyung is the first to respond, his tone sharp, almost immediate. That's not a plan, that's a risk. And Jimin doesn't deny it, doesn't soften it. He just nods slightly. I know. And that calm acceptance is what makes it more dangerous. Because it means he's already thought this through, already weighed the consequences, and decided it's worth it anyway. And Jin steps forward now, concern written clearly across his face. Jimin, if they're targeting you. And Jimin cuts him off, not harshly, but firmly. Then they'll come to me. And that's the point. That's the strategy. And it takes a second for it to fully click, for them to understand what he's suggesting. And when it does, the reaction is immediate, almost unanimous. No. But Jimin doesn't back down, doesn't even hesitate, because in his mind, this isn't reckless, this is necessary. This is the only way to stop reacting and start controlling the situation. And he explains it simply, directly. We don't know who they are, we don't know how they got close, but we know what they want. And his gaze sharpens slightly, so we give them a chance to come for it. And that logic is dangerous, risky, but also effective in a way that none of them can ignore. And RM exhales slowly, running a hand through his hair as he processes it. You're talking about setting a trap. And Jimin nods once. Exactly. And the word settles in, heavy with implication, because this isn't just defense anymore. This is offense. This is turning the situation around completely. And Taehyung shakes his head slightly, still unconvinced. And what happens if it goes wrong? And Jimin's answer comes without hesitation, without doubt. Then at least we'll know who we're dealing with. And that's the trade-off. That's the risk. Clarity for danger. Truth for exposure. And the room falls into a tense silence again, because no one can deny the logic. But no one can ignore the cost either. Inside the room, Jungkook stares at the ceiling, the conversation with Jimin still echoing in his head. Because he knows exactly what Jimin is going to do next. He knows that look, that tone, that shift in his voice when he's made up his mind, and it doesn't matter how risky it is, how dangerous it might be. Once Jimin decides something like that, he follows through, and that realization sits heavy in Jungkook's chest, mixing with the pain, with the exhaustion, with the frustration of not being able to stop it. Not from here, not like this. And he exhales slowly, closing his eyes for a second before opening them again, focusing on the one thing he can control right now, what he does next. And when the nurse steps in briefly to check on him, to adjust the IV, to make sure everything is stable, he waits until she leaves, until the room is quiet again, and then he reaches slowly for his phone on the side table, movements careful, deliberate, because even in this state, even like this, he's not done, not even close. And when he unlocks it, there's a message waiting. One he hasn't opened yet, one he didn't have the chance to see before everything went wrong. And for a second, he just stares at it, like he already knows what it's going to say, like he's been expecting it. And then he opens it, and the words on the screen confirm everything they feared, everything Jimin just decided to act on. You finally understand. Now let's see how far you're willing to go to protect him. and Jungkook's grip tightens around the phone despite the pain, because now it's clear, completely clear this isn't over, not even close. And Jimin just stepped exactly where they wanted him to. The plan doesn't take long to set into motion, not because it's simple, but because once Jimin decides something, everything else moves around that decision, whether anyone is fully ready or not. And within the next hour, calls are made, arrangements are shifted, schedules adjusted in ways that look normal from the outside but are anything but. And RM takes control of the logistics, making sure everything is as secure as possible without drawing attention, while Suga works quietly in the background, digging into every detail they have, every message, every pattern, trying to find something they missed before, something that could give them an edge this time. And Taehyung stays close, not to Jimin directly, but near enough to intervene if needed, his earlier confidence replaced with something more cautious now, more aware of how quickly things can spiral. And Jimin himself, he's calm, almost too calm, moving through everything with a level of focus that doesn't leave room for doubt, and that's what worries them the most. Not his fear, not his anger, but his certainty. Because certainty like that doesn't bend easily, doesn't stop when it should, and when he finally steps outside the hospital later that night, the air hits differently, cooler, sharper, like the world itself shifted while they were inside. And for a moment, he just stands there, taking it in, knowing full well that from this point forward, everything is part of the plan. Every move, every step, every decision. And then he starts walking. Not alone, never alone, but it feels like it. Because this part, the role he's chosen to play, that's something only he can carry, and somewhere, not far, someone is watching, waiting, exactly like he expected. Back inside, Jungkook tries to sit up, ignoring the immediate protest from his body. Because staying still, staying passive, that's not an option he's willing to accept right now. Not when he knows exactly what Jimin is doing, not when he knows exactly how this could go wrong. And the moment his feet touch the floor, the dizziness hits, hard enough to make him grip the edge of the bed just to stay upright. But he doesn't stop, doesn't sit back down, because the urgency outweighs the pain. And when the door opens suddenly, a nurse stepping in with a surprised expression, "You shouldn't be," he cuts her off, voice low but firm, "I need to leave." And she shakes her head immediately, stepping closer. "That's not possible. You're not stable yet." And that word again, stable, feels almost irrelevant right now, almost meaningless compared to what's happening outside that room. And Jungkook exhales sharply, frustration building. Because he knows time is limited, he knows every minute matters. And he tries again, more direct this time. "Then call Jimin." And the nurse hesitates, clearly unsure, clearly caught between protocol and the urgency in his tone. And that hesitation is enough to tell Jungkook what he needs to know: he's on his own for this, at least for now. And he straightens despite the pain, pushing through it, because if there's one thing he's not going to do, it's let Jimin walk into this alone. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement as Jimin reaches the designated spot, a place that looks ordinary enough to anyone passing by, but tonight it's anything but. And he stops just short of the entrance, scanning the area briefly, not obviously, not in a way that would give anything away, but enough to confirm what he already suspects: he's not alone. And that realization doesn't scare him, doesn't slow him down, it sharpens his focus instead. Because this is exactly what he wanted, exactly what he planned for. And he steps forward, crossing the invisible line between preparation and action. And the moment he does, something shifts. Subtle but undeniable, like the air itself changed, like the game just started for real. And he doesn't reach for his phone, doesn't call out, doesn't hesitate. He just waits, because he knows they'll make the first move. They have to. That's the whole point. And the seconds stretch, quiet, tense, until finally a voice, low, unfamiliar, from somewhere just out of sight. "You came alone." And Jimin doesn't turn immediately, doesn't react outwardly. He just answers, calm, controlled, "You knew I would." And there's a brief pause, like the person behind that voice is reassessing something, adjusting their expectations. And then they step into view just enough to be seen, Not fully, never fully, and Jimin's eyes lock onto that figure instantly, every sense sharpening at once, because this is the moment everything has been building toward. And the voice speaks again. Quieter this time, but far more dangerous. Let's see if you're worth the risk. And Jimin's response comes without hesitation, without fear. Try me. And in that instant, the line between hunter and target disappears completely. Back at the hospital, the empty bed says everything before anyone even speaks. The sheets slightly disturbed, the IV line disconnected, and the realization hits all of them at once. Jungkook is gone, and RM's expression hardens immediately, already reaching for his phone, already moving into action mode, while Jin looks toward the door like he expects Jungkook to walk back in any second, like this might still be a misunderstanding, and Taehyung just stands there. Still, too still, because he knows exactly what this means. He knows exactly where Jungkook would go, and more importantly, why. And Suga exhales slowly, the tension in his shoulders tightening just slightly as he says the one thing none of them wanted to hear. They're both out there now. And that's the reality of it. The plan just doubled its risk, doubled its unpredictability, because now it's not just Jimin playing the role they expected, it's Jungkook stepping back into the game, injured, unstable, but still moving forward anyway. And somewhere out there, in the space between intention and consequence, those two decisions are about to collide in a way none of them can fully control anymore. And just as Jimin takes one step closer to the shadow in front of him, a second presence moves in from behind, faster, reckless, familiar, and everything changes in a single second.
Jimin doesn't turn when he hears the movement behind him, not immediately, because reacting too fast would give away control. And right now control is the only thing keeping this situation from collapsing. But his eyes shift slightly, just enough to catch the reflection in the glass beside him. And the moment he recognizes the silhouette, something in his chest tightens hard, sharp, because that wasn't part of the plan, not even close, and the voice in front of him notices it too, the subtle change. The almost invisible crack in Jimin's composure, and a low, amused breath follows. So you didn't come alone after all. And that's when Jimin finally moves, turning just enough to confirm what he already knows. What he was hoping wasn't true, and there he is, Jungkook, pale, unsteady, but standing. And the anger that flashes through Jimin is immediate, stronger than the fear, stronger than the relief, because this is exactly what he was trying to prevent. And his voice cuts through the tension without hesitation. What are you doing here? And Jungkook doesn't answer right away. His breathing uneven, but his eyes locked on the figure in front of them, not on Jimin, not on anything else, just that one target. And when he finally speaks, it's low, controlled, but there's strain underneath it. Finishing what I started. And that answer hits wrong in every possible way, because it means Jungkook didn't just come to protect him. He came to confront something directly, something personal. Something that goes deeper than what Jimin understood before. And the figure in front of them shifts slightly, stepping further into the light, still obscured just enough to keep their identity unclear. But their posture changes, more alert now, more interested, and they let out a quiet laugh that doesn't reach their eyes. This is better than I expected. And Jimin steps forward slightly, positioning himself just enough to keep Jungkook from moving any closer, his voice dropping, sharp and warning. You shouldn't have come. But Jungkook's response is immediate, almost cutting him off. You don't get to say that. And there it is again, that same tension, that same clash of decisions. But this time it's happening in front of the very person who caused all of this. And that makes it worse, makes it more dangerous, because any weakness, any hesitation, any crack between them is something that can be used. And the figure notices it instantly, of course they do. Their head tilting slightly as they observe the exchange, calculating, patient, interesting. Even now you're not aligned. And that statement lands like a challenge, like a test. And Jimin feels it, recognizes it for what it is, and he doesn't let it settle, doesn't let it create distance between them. He shifts just slightly, closing the space between himself and Jungkook instead of widening it, not looking at him but making the message clear anyway, and his voice comes out steadier this time, more controlled. We don't need to be. And the figure's smile fades just a fraction. Enough to show that wasn't the answer they were expecting, and that's when Jungkook steps forward despite everything, despite the pain, despite the instability, his voice lower now but carrying more weight than before. You. Jungkook's voice doesn't rise, but it cuts clean through the tension like something sharp and final. You've been watching long enough. Now step out properly. And for the first time the figure hesitates just slightly, like that wasn't part of the script they expected to follow. And then slowly, deliberately, they take another step forward into the light, enough for their outline to become clearer but still not enough to fully reveal their face. And Jimin's eyes narrow instantly, every instinct sharpening at once because there's something familiar in the way they move. Something controlled, practiced, not random, not careless. And that realization alone makes this situation even more dangerous than it already was. Because this isn't just someone reckless, this is someone who knows exactly what they're doing. And the figure tilts their head slightly, studying both of them now, their voice softer but carrying an unsettling calm. I was wondering how long it would take for you to break the rules. And Jimin's attention snaps to that word rules, because that's new, that's not something they mentioned before, and Jungkook's reaction is immediate. Subtle but there, his jaw tightening just enough to confirm it means something to him. And Jimin catches it instantly, of course he does, and without taking his eyes off the figure he asks quietly, what rules? And there's a brief silence, a pause where Jungkook clearly considers not answering again, clearly considers holding it back just a little longer, but that option is gone now, completely gone, and he exhales slowly before speaking. They don't act randomly. Everything follows a pattern. And the figure smiles again at that, like they're pleased he said it out loud, like this is exactly how they wanted it to unfold, and Jimin processes it quickly, his mind already shifting, adapting, because if there are rules then there's structure, and if there's structure then there's something they can predict, something they can use, and he asks the next question immediately, sharper this time, what kind of pattern? And Jungkook answers without looking at him, his focus still locked on the figure, escalation pressure. Isolation, and each word lands heavier than the last. Because it lines up perfectly with everything that's happened so far, the messages, the testing, the injury, and now this confrontation. And Jimin feels that patterns settle into place solid and clear, and that clarity changes something in him. Something that shifts from reaction to understanding, and he takes a slow step forward, not aggressive, not hesitant, just enough to show he's not backing down, and the figure watches him closely. Their posture adjusting slightly like they're recalibrating in real time, and Jimin speaks calm but precise. Then this is the part where you think you win. And there's a flicker of something in the figure's expression, not surprise exactly, but interest, and they respond quietly, no. This is the part where I see if you're worth continuing. And that statement hits differently, colder, more detached, because it means this isn't even the endgame for them. This is still a test, still a step in something bigger, and Jungkook moves again, closer now despite the strain in his body, and Jimin can feel it without looking, can feel the shift in balance as Jungkook refuses to stay behind him, refuses to be protected like that, and for a second, just a second. Jimin considers stopping him again, pulling him back, forcing him out of this situation, but he doesn't because he understands now. This isn't something Jungkook will step away from, not anymore, and instead he adjusts just slightly enough to stand beside him instead of in front of him. And that small change doesn't go unnoticed, not by Jungkook, not by the figure, and the air between them tightens again, heavier, more dangerous, and the figure lets out a quiet breath. Almost like a laugh, but not quite. Better. Now you look like something worth breaking, and that's the moment everything shifts from tension to action. Because Jungkook steps forward one more time, ignoring the way his body protests, ignoring the risk entirely, and his voice drops lower than before, steady despite everything. You're done testing. And for the first time there's a crack in the figure's calm, small but real, and they respond slower this time. That's not your decision, and Jungkook doesn't hesitate, doesn't pull back. It is if I end it here, and that statement hangs there, heavy with intent, because it's not a threat, it's a promise, and Jimin feels the shift immediately. The way the situation tilts on that one sentence. The way the figure's posture changes, sharper now, more guarded, and he knows this is it. This is the point where things stop being controlled, stop being predictable, and start becoming something else entirely. And before either of them can move further, before the tension can snap completely. A sound cuts through the moment, sharp, sudden, from somewhere behind them, and Jimin's instincts kick in instantly, his body turning just enough to react, to assess. And in that split second of distraction, the figure in front of them moves, faster than expected, closing the distance in a way that makes it clear they've been waiting for exactly that opening. And everything that happens next unfolds too fast to fully process, too fast to stop. And the only thing Jimin registers clearly is Jungkook stepping in front of him again, this time without hesitation, without warning, and the impact that follows is enough to change everything all over again. The impact isn't loud, not the way Jimin expected it to be. But it's heavy, sickening in the way it lands, and for a split second everything slows down just enough for him to see it clearly. Jungkook's body jerking forward, his breath catching sharply, the figure already pulling back with calculated precision like they never intended to stay longer than necessary. And Jimin's mind blanks completely before snapping back all at once, adrenaline hitting hard as he catches Jungkook before he can collapse again, his voice breaking through the silence, this time uncontrolled. Jungkook. And this time there's no holding back, no control left in the tone, just raw panic cutting through everything else, and Jungkook tries to steady himself, tries to stay upright, but it's clear immediately that whatever just happened wasn't minor, wasn't something he can push through like before, and the figure takes a step back into the shadows again. Watching, observing like this was just another data point, another test result, and Jimin's eyes snap up instantly, rage replacing the panic in an instant. Sharp and focused, because this is exactly what they wanted, to provoke, to push, to destabilize, and Jimin moves like he's about to go after them, like he's about to close the distance and end it right there. But Jungkook's hand grips his sleeve weakly, stopping him just enough, grounding him just enough, and his voice comes out strained but clear, don't follow, and that one sentence is enough to freeze Jimin in place again. Because it's not fear, it's not hesitation. It's certainty, and that certainty forces him to stop, forces him to think instead of react. And by the time he looks up again, the figure is already gone, completely vanished into the dark like they were never there to begin with. And the silence that follows feels heavier than the confrontation itself, because now they're left with the aftermath, with the consequences. With the realization that they just played exactly into the pattern Jungkook described, and Jimin exhales sharply, his focus snapping back to Jungkook immediately, lowering him carefully to sit, his hands moving instinctively to check the injury, to assess, to do something, anything, but the situation is already clear. This just made everything worse, and Jungkook's breathing is uneven again, more strained than before, and Jimin's voice drops tight with controlled urgency. We're going back now. And this time Jungkook doesn't argue, doesn't resist, because he knows it too, knows they crossed a line they can't undo. And as Jimin helps him up, supporting more of his weight than he's willing to admit, there's a shift between them again, subtle but real, because this isn't just about hiding anymore, this is about surviving something that's already escalated beyond what either of them expected. And when they finally make it back to the car. When the door closes and the outside world cuts off just enough to let the silence settle in again, Jimin doesn't start the engine right away. He just sits there for a second, hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his mind replaying everything that just happened, every word, every move, every mistake, and then he turns his head slightly, looking at Jungkook directly for the first time since the impact, and his voice is quieter now, but far more dangerous than before. No more plans without me. And Jungkook exhales slowly, leaning back against the seat, eyes half closed but still focused enough to meet Jimin's gaze. And he nods once, just once, because at this point there's no point in arguing, no point in holding anything back anymore, and the car finally starts, pulling away from the scene, from the shadows, from the place where everything shifted again. But neither of them says anything else for the rest of the drive, because they both know this isn't over. Not even close. And back at the hospital, the moment they walk in, the reactions are immediate: shock, frustration, relief, all hitting at once. Voices overlapping, questions firing one after another, but Jimin cuts through it all with a single look, a single shift in posture that makes everyone stop, because something is different now, something more serious, more urgent, and RM steps forward first, his voice steady but tense. What happened? And Jimin doesn't answer right away, doesn't give details, because right now the only thing that matters is what comes next, and when he finally speaks, his words are clear, direct, leaving no room for misunderstanding. We're done waiting. And that statement settles over the room like a decision already made, like a line already crossed, and Suga watches him closely for a second before asking the only question that matters now: and what does that mean? And Jimin's gaze sharpens, his answer coming without hesitation: it means we stop reacting to them. And we start breaking their pattern. And that's when everything shifts again, because for the first time since this started, they're not just trying to survive it, they're preparing to fight back, and somewhere out there, the one who started all of this is already waiting to see what they'll do next, already calculating, already adapting. And the game they thought they were controlling is about to change in a way none of them can predict. Because now it's not just about testing limits anymore. It's about who's willing to cross them first. The hospital room feels smaller this time, tighter, like the walls themselves are closing in with every second that passes. And no one speaks for a moment after Jimin's words settle in, because they all feel it, that shift, that line being crossed, and RM is the first to move again, slower this time, more deliberate, like he's choosing his words carefully because he knows this isn't just another discussion. This is the moment everything changes direction. Breaking their pattern means we need to understand it fully, and Jimin nods once, already expecting that, already thinking ahead. Then we start from the beginning, and his gaze shifts to Jungkook, not harsh, not accusing, but direct, because now there's no room left for half-truths, and Jungkook understands that immediately, even through the exhaustion, even through the pain still pulling at his body, and he exhales slowly before speaking, his voice steady despite everything. The first message came 3 weeks ago, and just like that the story rewinds. The tension reshapes into something more structured, more dangerous, because now they're not just reacting, they're analyzing, and Jungkook continues. It wasn't a threat at first, it was a question. And that detail lands differently because questions aren't random, questions are intentional, designed to provoke, to test, to measure. And Jimin leans forward slightly, focused completely now. What kind of question? And Jungkook's eyes flick down for just a second before coming back up. They asked what I would do if I had to choose between protecting the group or protecting you. And the room goes completely still, because that's not just a question, that's a setup. A psychological test disguised as curiosity, and Jimin's chest tightens again. But this time he doesn't let it show, doesn't let it interrupt the flow, because now this is about information, about understanding the full scope of what they're dealing with, and he asks quietly, "And what did you answer?" And Jungkook doesn't hesitate this time. Nothing, and that answer makes sense, but it also explains everything that followed, because silence can be interpreted just as easily as words, maybe even more so. And Suga steps closer, his voice low but precise. So they escalated, and Jungkook nods slightly. They sent another message the next day, more direct, and J-Hope crosses his arms, tension clear in his posture. What did it say? And Jungkook's jaw tightens just slightly before he repeats it, word for word. If you don't choose, we'll choose for you. And that sentence hits harder than anything else so far, because it confirms intent, control, manipulation, and the pattern becomes clearer with every piece. and RM processes it quickly, his voice steady but sharper now, so they weren't just observing. They were guiding the outcome, and that realization shifts everything again because it means every step, every reaction, every decision Jungkook made was part of something bigger, something designed, and Jimin feels that settle in heavy and cold because it means even his own involvement might have been predicted, might have been planned for, and he looks at Jungkook again more carefully this time. Why didn't you tell me then? And the question isn't angry, not anymore, it's something else now, something deeper, and Jungkook meets his gaze directly, no hesitation left, because they were right. And that answer lands harder than anything else because it's not just about the threat anymore, it's about belief, about perception, about how Jungkook saw the situation. And Jimin's expression tightens just slightly. About what? And Jungkook's voice drops, quieter now but no less clear. You would have stepped in. And that's exactly what they wanted. And the room falls silent again because no one can deny it, not after everything that just happened, not after Jimin walks straight into the situation they set up. And for a second, just a second, there's a flicker of something in Jimin's eyes, frustration, maybe even guilt. But it doesn't stay there, it doesn't take hold because he pushes past it, focusing on what matters now, what they can still control, and he straightens slightly, his tone shifting again. More decisive? Then we use that. And that draws everyone's attention back to him immediately because they recognize that shift now, they know what it means, and Taehyung is the first to respond, cautious but engaged. Use it how? And Jimin doesn't hesitate. If they expect me to react, then I react exactly how they want. And the room stills again because that sounds counterintuitive at first, sounds like playing directly into the pattern instead of breaking it. And Jin frowns slightly, voicing the concern everyone is thinking, wouldn't that just make it easier for them? And Jimin shakes his head slowly, his gaze sharpening. Not if we control what they see, and that's the key, the difference, the shift from being manipulated to manipulating the perception itself, and Suga's eyes narrow slightly as he processes it. You're talking about feeding them the pattern they expect, while changing what it leads to, and Jimin nods once. Exactly. And now it starts to make sense, now the pieces begin to align in a different way, because instead of resisting the structure they're going to use it, redirect it, turn it against whoever is behind this. And RM exhales slowly, running a hand through his hair again. That means we need to know every step they expect before they make it. And Jungkook speaks again, quieter this time but just as important. I can help with that. And all eyes shift to him instantly, because that's the first time he's offered something like that directly. And Jimin's gaze softens just slightly, not losing its edge but shifting enough to show he's listening. And Jungkook continues. They're predictable in one way, they don't skip steps. And that detail locks something into place immediately because it means there's a sequence, a structure they can anticipate, and Jimin leans forward again, focused completely now. Then what's next? Jungkook doesn't answer right away, not because he doesn't know, but because saying it out loud makes it real, makes it immediate. And when he finally does, his voice is steady but there's weight behind it, separation, and that word hangs in the air, heavy and dangerous, because it fits too well, because it explains everything that's been happening. The isolation, the secrecy, the division between them, and Jimin feels it settle in his chest, cold and clear, because now he knows exactly what they're aiming for. Exactly what they've been building toward, and he straightens slowly, his decision already forming before he even speaks. Then we don't let them separate us. And that sounds simple, but everyone in the room knows it won't be, because if that's the next step, then it's already in motion, already happening in ways they might not even see yet. And Taehyung's voice comes out lower this time, more serious than before. What if they already did? And that question lingers, heavier than any of them want to admit, because it forces them to consider the possibility that the pattern isn't just something that's going to happen. It's something that's already begun. And Jimin's gaze sharpens again, scanning each of them one by one, not with suspicion this time, but with awareness, because if separation is the next move, then the real question isn't how to stop it, it's where it's already started. The realization doesn't explode all at once. It settles in slowly, quietly, and that makes it worse because no one can immediately point to a single moment, a single decision, a single fracture that caused it, but the more they think about it, the clearer it becomes that the separation didn't start tonight. It didn't start with the injury, it didn't even start with the threats. It started earlier, in small moments they ignored, in conversations that didn't happen, in decisions made alone instead of together. And Jimin feels that more than anyone, because now that he's looking for it, he can see it everywhere. The way Jungkook kept his distance over the past weeks, the way Taehyung avoided certain topics, the way the group slowly shifted without anyone saying it out loud. And his jaw tightens slightly as that understanding locks into place, because this wasn't just an external force pushing them apart. They helped it happen piece by piece without realizing it. And that makes this harder, because now fixing it isn't just about stopping someone else, it's about undoing something they already allowed. And RM seems to reach the same conclusion at the same time, his voice quieter now but heavier. We've already been divided. And no one argues with that, no one can, because it's true. And Suga exhales slowly, crossing his arms as he leans back slightly, his tone thoughtful but sharp, which means the next move isn't creating separation. It's exploiting it. And that shift in perspective changes everything again, because now they're not just trying to prevent something. They're trying to close gaps that already exist, and J-Hope runs a hand through his hair, tension clear in the movement. Then we need to know where the gaps are. And his gaze moves between them, searching, measuring, and for a moment no one answers because saying it out loud makes it real, makes it personal. And Jimin feels that hesitation, recognizes it for what it is. And he steps forward slightly, breaking the silence before it can settle into something worse. Then we stop avoiding it, and his voice is steady, but there's something deeper underneath it now, something more honest. If there's distance between us, we deal with it now. And that's not an easy statement, not in a situation like this, not when emotions are already running high, but it's necessary and they all know it. And Jungkook shifts slightly on the bed, wincing but pushing through it, his gaze lifting to meet Jimin. And for a second there's something unspoken there, something that doesn't need to be explained because they both understand it already. And Jungkook speaks first, quieter than before but no less clear. You think I pushed you away. It's not defensive, not accusatory, just a statement, and Jimin doesn't hesitate, doesn't soften it. You did, and that honesty lands hard, but it doesn't break anything. It clarifies it, and Jungkook nods slightly. Like he expected that answer, like he's already accepted it, and he exhales slowly before continuing. Because I thought it would keep you out of it. And that's the same reasoning as before, but now it sounds different. Now it feels different because they're looking at it from the outside. From a place of understanding instead of reaction, and Jimin's expression shifts just slightly, not softening completely, but losing some of its edge. And it didn't. And that's the truth, simple and unavoidable, and Jungkook's lips press together briefly before he nods again. No. It didn't, and that admission matters more than anything else because it closes that gap at least a little, and Taehyung steps forward next, his voice lower, more careful, and I helped him. And all eyes shift to him immediately because that's the part that hasn't been fully addressed yet, the part that still lingers between them, and Taehyung doesn't avoid it this time, doesn't look away. I thought if we controlled it early, it wouldn't reach this point. And there's regret there, subtle but real, and Jimin studies him for a second, weighing that, processing it, and then he nods once, not in agreement but in acknowledgement, because right now blame doesn't fix anything, and Suga watches the exchange quietly before adding, intent doesn't change the outcome, and that's the reality of it, the part none of them can ignore, and the room falls into a brief silence again. But this one feels different, less tense, more focused. Because now everything is out in the open, or at least more than it was before, and Jimin exhales slowly, grounding himself again, pulling the focus back to what matters most. Then we stop letting them use that against us. And his gaze moves across all of them, steady, deliberate, no more separate decisions, no more handling things alone. And his eyes land on Jungkook for just a second longer, not accusing, just firm. Everything goes through all of us, and that's not a suggestion. Not a request, it's a rule, and RM nods immediately. Backing it without hesitation, agreed. And one by one the others follow, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary, and that's the first real step toward closing the distance, toward rebuilding something that was already starting to crack. And Jungkook leans back slightly, exhaustion finally catching up with him now that the immediate tension has eased just a fraction, but his gaze stays on Jimin, steady, clear, and he nods once more, no more secrets, and that's the second rule. The one that matters just as much, and for a moment everything feels aligned again, not perfect, not completely fixed, but stronger than it was before, and that's exactly what they need because whatever comes next, it's not going to be easier, and as if on cue, as if the situation itself refuses to give them even a moment to settle, Jimin's phone vibrates sharply in his pocket, the sound cutting through the room like a warning, and every head turns instantly, every sense sharpening again because they all know what that means. They all know this isn't random, and Jimin pulls it out slowly, his expression tightening just slightly as he looks at the screen, and for a second he doesn't say anything, doesn't move. Just reads, and then his jaw sets, his eyes hardening in a way that tells them everything before he even speaks, and when he finally does, his voice is quieter than before but far more dangerous. They've already made their next move. And that sentence shifts everything again, snapping them out of that brief alignment and back into the reality of what they're dealing with, and RM steps forward immediately. What is it? And Jimin doesn't look away from the screen as he answers, each word deliberate, controlled. They're not trying to separate us anymore. And there's a pause just long enough to make it worse, just long enough to let the tension build again, and then he finishes the sentence in a way that changes everything all over again. They're forcing us to choose. The words hang in the air like something physical. Something heavy that presses down on all of them at once. And for a second no one speaks because choose doesn't sound like a strategy, it sounds like a trap, and Jimin's grip tightens slightly around his phone as he reads the message again. Slower this time, like he's trying to find something hidden between the lines, something they can use, but the wording is too clean, too deliberate, and that alone makes it worse. Because whoever is behind this knows exactly how to push them, exactly how to force a reaction, and RM steps closer, his voice controlled but urgent. Read it out loud. And Jimin exhales once before doing exactly that, his tone flat but sharp. Tomorrow, noon, you decide who matters more. Come alone or we decide for you. And the silence that follows is different from before, heavier, more dangerous, because now the pattern is undeniable, now the escalation is complete, and Suga is the first to break it. His voice low, almost thoughtful, they're accelerating. and that observation matters because it means something changed. Something triggered the shift from testing to forcing outcomes, and Jimin already knows what it is. He doesn't need to say it because everyone in the room feels it too. The confrontation tonight, the fact that they showed up together, the fact that they didn't break the way they were supposed to, and that means whoever is behind this is adjusting, pushing harder, faster, and J-Hope runs a hand over his face, tension clear in every movement. If they're forcing a choice, then they're controlling the options, and that's the key, the part that makes this more than just a threat, because it means the situation is already set up in a way they don't fully understand yet, and Jin's voice comes out quieter, more uncertain than usual. What kind of choice? And no one answers right away, because there's only one answer that makes sense, and none of them want to say it out loud, and Jimin finally lowers the phone, his gaze shifting slowly to Jungkook. And that's when it clicks for everyone at the same time, because the pattern, the messages, everything points back to the same thing, the same pressure point, and Jungkook's expression tightens just slightly as he realizes it too, as he understands exactly what kind of choice they're being forced into, and he exhales slowly. His voice steady but quieter than before. They're going to make you choose between me. The group, and that sentence lands harder than anything else so far because it's not just strategic. It's personal, it's designed to break something fundamental between them. And Jimin's jaw tightens, not in hesitation, not in doubt, but in frustration because he sees it clearly now, the entire setup, the entire pattern, and he shakes his head once, slow but firm no. And that one word cuts through the tension immediately because it's not denial, it's refusal, and RM watches him carefully. Already understanding that shift, but Jimin doesn't let him finish, doesn't let the uncertainty build. I'm not choosing. And there's something final in his tone, something that makes it clear this isn't a decision he's still considering. It's one he's already made, and Taehyung steps forward slightly, concern flashing across his face. If you don't, they will, and that's the reality of it, the part they can't ignore, the consequence waiting if they refuse to play along, and Jimin meets his gaze directly, unflinching. Then we change the rules, and that statement shifts everything again because it's not just defiance. It's strategy, and Suga's eyes narrow slightly, interest replacing some of the tension. You have something in mind. And Jimin nods once, already thinking it through, already mapping it out in real time. They expect me to come alone. And RM picks up immediately, following the logic, which means they're prepared for that scenario. And Jimin continues without missing a beat. So we don't give them that, and the room stills again because that's risky, more risky than anything they've suggested so far, and Jin frowns slightly. If we all go, they might not show up, and Jimin shakes his head, sharper this time. They will, and there's certainty there, the same certainty he's been carrying since the moment he understood the pattern. Because this isn't about the choice anymore, it's about control, and that distinction matters because it means the situation isn't dependent on his compliance. It's dependent on their ability to maintain dominance, and Suga nods slowly, the idea clicking into place. So we take that away, and Jimin's gaze sharpens. Exactly, and now the plan starts to form, clearer, more defined. Because instead of responding to the ultimatum, they're going to disrupt it entirely, force whoever is behind this to react instead. And Jungkook shifts slightly on the bed, pushing himself up despite the lingering weakness because he already sees where this is going, already understands the risk, and his voice comes out lower, more serious than before. If we do that, they'll escalate again. And that's not a guess, it's a certainty, and Jimin meets his gaze without hesitation. I know. And there's no fear in it, no doubt, just acceptance of what's coming next. And Jungkook studies him for a second, like he's measuring something, like he's deciding whether to argue or not. And then he exhales slowly, nodding once because he already knows the answer, already knows Jimin won't back down from this. Not now, not after everything, and RM straightens slightly. His tone shifting back into leadership, into action. Then we prepare for that, and the room moves with that decision, the tension reshaping into focus, into urgency, because now they have a direction, now they have a plan, even if it's risky, even if it's not perfect. And as they start outlining the details, the movements, the contingencies, Jimin's phone buzzes again. Sharper this time, more immediate, and he looks down at it instinctively, already expecting another message, another push, another adjustment. But when he reads it, his expression changes in a way that stops everything again, because this time, it's not just a threat, and his voice when he speaks is quieter than before but far more serious. They're watching us right now. And the room goes completely still because that changes everything again, because it means this isn't just a distant threat anymore. This is immediate, this is present, this is happening now, and slowly, almost instinctively, their attention shifts, not to each other, not to the door, but to the space around them, to the realization that somewhere, somehow, the person controlling all of this is already closer than they ever expected.